Hi and good morning, everyone. Um, Today is a good day. It's uh, it's a chilly, kind of moist morning here in Minnesota, and it has its own kind of nice kind of uh, feeling of solitude this morning. I'm the only one up here at my house, and I enjoy this morning time in solitude and just time to really um, ease into the day in quiet and kind of a slow, steady way. So, and good morning. Good morning. I see Sue is on. Good morning, Sue. And so today, what I'd like to just tie this thread forward and just go back to where we began. And really, all these morning meditations have really all been grounded in this quote from Viktor Frankl, that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our ability to choose our response. And it is in those choices that lie our growth and our happiness. And we talked about, Viktor Frankl talked about this ability to create that space between what happens to us and our response to it. As we create that bigger space, we increase our internal freedom. And what he called was the last of the human freedoms. And this has been my experience through the challenges and compelling times of my life, that the more internal freedom I create, the more possibility and the more that I've experienced that I can grow positive, generative things out of what seemingly were seen, my mind could have labeled as negative. And I believe that's true for all of us. But we have to be open to that possibility. We have to be open to a new narrative and know how to skillfully direct our attention. So as we begin here, we've been exploring, well, what's in that space. In that space, we as human beings have self-awareness. And so we've been exploring, what can we pay attention to with regard to self-awareness. We've explored somatic awareness in terms of thoughts, emotions, sensations. We have that ability to cultivate that somatic awareness, the importance of noticing what our mood is and being able to shift mood. Hopefully some of you have been able to experience a mood shift, even in that 1-minute meditation. And there's also, we have in that space between stimulus and response, we have our conscience, our sense of right and wrong. We have our independent will, our ability to take action and shift the world through our intentions and actions. And the other thing is our imagination and creativity. So that's what I'd like to start exploring here over the next couple weeks, is the exploration of creativity and art that exists in this space between stimulus and response. And why this is, I really feel this is so important, is because we're in a moment in time now globally where the old way, the old structures are no longer useful under this new reality. And so my sense is what that's going to take, is it's going to take imagination and creativity in many different areas of our culture, as well as us personally, to reimagine a new way to move, to communicate, to coordinate, and that to do business, and that's going to take creativity and art and more right brain thinking in order to reimagine the new solutions. And so I really believe that's our that's our part of our birthright, is in that internal freedom is the ability to be creative and adaptable. And so about 3 years ago, I discovered that I had this affinity for creativity and art in particular. I had this assessment done, and I thought to myself, well, of all the things that I could have an affinity for, or kind of the way I think to lean towards, like it just kind of seemed like at the time to me when I discovered this, it kind of seemed like a consolation prize, to have art as one of my orientations to life. Creativity is one of my orientations, because I had always assumed art and creativity was something to do with personal enrichment, a way to have a nice hobby, those types of things. And as I started to explore and investigate creativity and art, what I started to realize is that it's really everywhere, in every area of our life, from business to engineering to architecture, to, you can think of it, there's an artistic aspect to almost everything. And so I started to open up to this, and I became curious about, well, if this is one of the things that I'm, I lean towards, I orient towards, well, what do creative people, or what do artists do? What are their practices? And so I started to do some research, and I came upon this. I found out later it was an iconic book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way, and it's called as The Artist's Way: A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. And so I started to explore it, and I started to read it, and as I started to learn more, I got the audiobook, and then I started reading the individual weeks. It's, for those of you that don't know, it's a 12-week course to expand anybody's creativity. And so I started to read it, and started to open up to this this possibility of increasing creativity. And so with a friend last year, we started the 12-week course together, where we did everything, all the steps, where we signed a creativity agreement, each of us, and handed it to the other, so we would stay in the practices for 12 weeks. And so it was amazing. All I can say is that my understanding of the practices, the daily and weekly practices that creative people that make their living through creativity are in, was amazing. And working through and understanding the creative process, really for me, what it did is it really brought structure, and it brought validation to something that has always been in me, but I didn't really know it was a way you could be in the world. I just thought it was, some, way that I kind of experienced the world, but I didn't know others were having that experience as well, and that there were practices and structure to help that unfold. And so what I'd like to explore here is in the next meditations for the next couple weeks is, basically go through, share my thoughts on the artist's way and my experience of it, and go through share my thoughts on each one of the 12 lessons. And it's all for the sake of helping to foster creativity and imagination in all of us, so that we can start to expand that the imagination that exists in the space between the stimulus and the response, so that we all can start to make a creative contribution and to better find the solutions that right now are unknown. And the more we can really tie into our creativity, my sense is that will allow us to not only have a sense of community as we share these ideas, but we're really going to be producing a positive experience within ourselves, and on our path to creating these things, which is really powerful. And we'll talk about that in the artist's way, is that art is process, not final form. It's probably one of my biggest lessons from that entire book. Before I used to think of art as the vase or the painting, or if you're a business artist, an entrepreneur, the business, like the finished product. But she really talks about that art is the energetic state that we're in while we're creating the form. Those positive energetic states of acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm, that really is the art, and it happens to produce a final form. But the real blessing is the energetic state we're in as we're in the process of art. And so that's what I'd like to start to share some of those practices, explore those topics for each of the 12 weeks, so we can start to expand our imagination, our creativity, one of those capacities that we humans have in our internal freedom. So that's what I wanted to share today. I guess the biggest thing I'll share is just to give a preview of that course. I'll post the link to the book on my Facebook page after I post this. The biggest thing I'd like to just share is that, my biggest opening is to orient to that art is process, not final form. And when we can orient to reframe success as being in a positive energetic state, mindset, whatever you want to call it, versus focusing on final achievement, then we're really starting to move into creativity and art in this frame of reference. And I will say that once I shifted my orientation to that, it really it shifted my experience of a big part of my life. There are 3 practices that I'll just preview that in the artist's way that are recommended, or I would say are strongly encouraged, and that is 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness writing every morning, just to get anything that comes to your mind, you write it down, whether it's good punctuation, correct spelling, wrong spelling, just moving your hand across the page. And that practice is meant to help you start to unblock your creativity. And so 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness, almost like it's a writing meditation, is how she frames it. I blended that into my seated practice. What we've been doing is seated practice. I blended that in to where I will do my seated meditation and then write 3 pages of a writing meditation. They're called morning pages. And then the next piece is pre-scheduling and taking a weekly artist date where you pre-plan a 1 to 2 hour block of time where you go out alone and you go do something that's inspiring to you, even if it's whimsical. An example was this last summer. One of my artist dates was I was on Madeline Island, and I was going to take the artist date, and the image that kept coming up for me was these mopeds that they have on Madeline Island, and I've always wanted to ride them. That image was strong, so I obeyed that impulse, and I called up the moped place, and I just took an hour to just cruise the island, just having a blast. And that memory is still a strong memory for me and produced tremendous amounts of creativity. So a weekly artist date, and then taking a daily artist walk. And that's really where you start to take your creative impulses and you just go on a walk. Again, you go on a walk alone, and not with another person, but you just with your creativity, and you start to take your creativity and you start to connect it to movement and action. That's the whole focus of walking, is to start to move your creativity into action, so that we can take things from imagination. I like to think of it from imagination to operation. So we become skilled and well practiced in taking inspired images and Julia Cameron says midwifing them into this world, into reality, through detailed planning and through action. And so these inspired thoughts and images that we're having, we don't just let them pass by as fancy, but we actually see them as gifts that being offered to us, that we can operationalize into the world, and that actually become a physical form in this world. And that's been my experience this whole last year, is that I no longer see my recurrent inspired images or inspirations that float through my mind as something to amuse me and then move on. If they come back on a recurrent basis, I start making a detailed plan to bring them into the world, into this concrete world. And so that's a possibility for all of us. So there are the morning pages, the writing meditation, the artist's date, so doing something once a week that inspires you, and an artist walk, daily artist walk. And interestingly enough, and I've thought of these 3 artist practices, they are by design to be done in solitude, to be done alone. And so as we've been in this practice of social distancing during this COVID crisis, what I've noticed is I'm really tied into these practices that I've been doing for a year alone, and it has been a wonderful support to be able to to have a completely different frame of reference for doing these activities alone, versus feeling like doing them alone is somehow less, or I've lost something. I'm just really falling into what has been life-giving and supportive for over a year. So I just want to open that up to all of you, that these artist practices somehow fit so very nicely with what the practice of social distancing that we're all in right now. So there's the overview of the artist way. Again, it's all about expanding our imagination and our creativity in that space that we all have between the stimulus and our response to it. So with that, let's begin to settle in here. Great, I see Darlene's here, my sister Monica's here, Slavko's here, Petra is here, and Lisa is here. So great to see all of you. So let's begin together. Let's start with a mood check, tying into our self-awareness. Noticing your mood right now, just to share that and model that. I feel happy and tired. So notice what your mood is. And again, we're meeting that without judgment, without attachment, and without resistance. Let's take a deep breath in. Let's begin by relaxing our eyes, softening our eyes, relaxing our jaw and chin. Begin to relax our neck, this area of voice and self-expression. And let's bring our shoulders up, clench our fists a little bit. Feel how that kind of numbs sensation. And then when you release, see if you can feel how that starts to bring some sensation to rush back. And kind of imagine when we contract our body and relax it, it's like turning a hose on and pinching it, and it builds up pressure. And when you release, more water shoots out the end of the hose. That's a good metaphor for that practice. So let's do that again. We're pinching off that hose, building up the pressure. And then relaxing our shoulders. And relaxing our chest. Opening our chest. Relaxing our diaphragm. Softening your belly. Good. Relaxing your pelvis muscles, your pelvic floor muscles. So one thing you do is kind of contract your pelvis up and in, like you're pinching off that hose. Contract your glutes and then release. Good. Contracting your hips, your pelvic floor, pulling it up and in. And then release. And feel those sensations start to move. Then relaxing your thighs, fronts and back. Relax your knees and calves. Relax your feet and your toes. And just slowly start to relax your hands and fingers. What we're trying to do here is create more space. Whatever emotion that was moving in us, we're trying to create some space for those emotions, those sensations. And let's take some time to center here. Let's center in our length. So it's standing or sitting, wherever you are. Let's just find that balance from top to bottom. One imagery you can use is imagine your body is feeling yourself as a bridge between heaven and earth, a bridge between your spirituality and your physicality. Now let's do some imagery breath work here. So take a deep breath in through the crown of your head. Pull that breath through with your attention and your imagination, and exhale out through your feet and hands. Take a deep breath in through your feet and hands. And exhale out through the crown of your head. One more time, taking a deep breath in through the crown of your head. Pull that breath through with your attention and your imagination, and exhale out through your feet and hands. You might notice as you do that imagery, those muscular contractions begin to soften further. And then let's bring our attention into our width, our somatic width, our balance between left and right. You can just kind of rock onto your sit bones or onto your feet. Try to find balance there. This horizontal plane is this plane, this social emotional plane. It's where we find our balance between ourselves, taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. In other words, another way to say that is we don't want to get so far pulled off that we're taking care of others, that we're not taking care of ourselves. And we don't want to be so self-consumed that we can't bring our attention to and feel other people. We want to be able to do both. And that's not just a thought we think in our head, but it's a way that we orient our body in our width and how we can feel ourselves while extending out to others. So find your balance there in your width. And with your imagination and your attention, take a deep breath in from your left side. Take a breath in, pull that breath through from left, and exhale out your right. Good. Take a deep breath in from your right side with your attention and your imagination. Breath in, and exhale out your left. One more time, take a deep breath in from your right, and exhale out and extend out the other side. And last time, take a deep breath in from your right, pull that breath through, exhale out your left, creating balance in your width. And then feel into your depth from front to back. The metaphor here is our depth is our relationship to future, present, and past. So let's just take some time to, since in our culture right now, there's so much orientation around what's going to happen next or what's next, and there can be anxiety. So let's just lean forward. Bring our body forward so we can start to feel what our minds are generally doing. And then slowly just bring yourself back until you feel like you're centered and your weight is aligned over your hips. It can be a gentle way to align your body with what your mind's already doing, and then slowly bring your mind and your body back into alignment, back into the present moment. And then let's feel into our back. So just lean back a bit. This is our history. The metaphor is our history, where we've been, all the experiences that have shaped us. And just slowly come back to center here. And then here, let's take our attention, bring it about 10 feet in front of you. Take a deep breath in with your imagination and your attention. Take a deep breath in, pull that breath through, and exhale out your back. Take a deep breath in from your back. Pull that breath through your body, exhale out into your future. And one more breath, take a deep breath in from the space in front of you. Pull that breath through, exhale out your back. And just find center here. Bring attention and energy to your hand so you can feel your hand without necessarily looking at it. Place that right over your navel so you're dropping your attention out of your thinking self down into your feeling self. Let's take 3 breaths here. Deep breath in. And breath in. And last breath, inhale. And exhale. So I invite you to close your eyes and begin to enter that meditative space. And as you close your eyes, set your intention. Remind yourself, for the sake of what, that you're doing the practice today, how it's relevant to your life. We'll enter it again with the words of Rumi: be empty of worrying, think who created the thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear, thinking, live in silence, flowing down and down into always widening rings of being. Be empty of worrying. Think who created the thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear, thinking, live in silence, flowing down and down into always widening rings of being. And as we close our practice today, remind yourself again, for the sake of what? And then on your next exhale, Slowly begin to move your arms and legs, and very gently and very slowly begin to open your eyes and let the outside world come back in again. And take a moment to recognize your mood right now. Right now, my mood has shifted to a felt sense of being settled and grounded. Notice what your mood is. And again, we're meeting that without judgment, attachment, or resistance. So thank you for sharing this time this morning, staying in this rhythm together as one of our creative resilience practices in this time. And may we all take what we've created this morning together and start to bring this into our lives in the coming hours and in the days this week. So bye for now. Thinking of each one of you and grateful for the time. Tomorrow we'll be here again 7 a.m. for this live reflection and meditation. And I hope you all can join as we start to explore more about creativity, imagination, and art as it relates to all of us, and the creativity and the newness and freshness that life is asking of us to bring into the world. Bye for now.